Hello, everyone. Happy Monday, or I say this all the time, whatever day you're watching,
Mhm.
listening. Hey, hopefully Monday. Hopefully you are getting alerts when the episodes drop and you are ready to consume. But whatever day you're consuming this episode, appreciate you being here. Ashley and I are back. A little bit of a break. It's springtime. Schedules get chaotic, but appreciate you all waiting. New episode is here, and we have a new guest with us this week. Nadia has joined us to discuss her transition out of the classroom and into the space that she is in now. So, very appreciative time that you're taking to join us here, Nadia. How have you been?
Thanks. I've been doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited it's been a while since I've talked about this, so it's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Ashley said you would be a great guest for us here, and we work a lot with people who are trying to transition, not just from the classroom into something new, but in general,
Yeah.
starting over can be an overwhelming process. So, as much insight that we can share, we are always happy to do that. So happy to have you here to share about your journey and how you found success since leaving the classroom.
Great.
All right. Well, I guess we can get started and we'll jump into the first question. Nadia, you left the classroom several years ago, transitioning to the L&D space and have been able to find success in that field for some time now. Making the move from classroom to your new role and reflecting on these past few years of this new position, what would you say have been some of the most refreshing things about the change you made in your career path?
Um, I'd say, I think the biggest thing is like as a teacher, we're often stuck in like survival mode. I felt like as a teacher, I was always in survival mode. Let me just get to the next day. Let me just get to the next break. Let me just get to summer. So it always felt like there was not I don't know. I just felt like I was surviving. I was trying to do the best for my students, for myself every day. And there wasn't a lot of strategy. There wasn't a lot of strategic thinking. It was a lot of managing chaos, a lot of urgency, a lot of just day-to-day things. And I feel like now I'm kind of moving into this space of strategy, intentional thinking, creativity. I'm thinking about learning intentionally, like taking the time to really sit down and think about how does someone learn? So I think that has been a great shift for my nervous system as well as just, for my brain. I think it just has been a better shift for me. I also think impact. I think a lot of teachers, when they leave the classroom, they think, oh my goodness, I'm leaving the mission. I'm leaving everything that I've left behind in terms of education and learning and what I love to do and
Mhm.
teaching. But you're really not. I've always looked at it as expanding my impact. So, I was impacting a classroom, probably more of 26 kids. We have those other kids that we see on a daily that might not be in our classroom. But you're thinking about those like 26 kids that you have in your classroom. But when you leave the classroom, you start to think about the impact. When I left and went into ed tech and K-12 and ed tech, and ed publishing, I started to think about like, I'm not just impacting 26 kids in a classroom, I'm now impacting thousands of kids in classrooms across the country. So I think that has been a good shift as well. Like just thinking about my impact and thinking about how learning in a strategic way. Um, I think those are the two things that stood out most to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of individuals who do transition out of education, that initial struggle is that concept of imposter syndrome,
Yes.
going from something that you've known for some time now into something new. And so is that something that you had to struggle with? And how did you go about overcoming that? I mean, in the classroom, the students are going to be honest with you, so you'll know right away if
Yeah.
you can do this or not. But in a different setting, it's not always apparent right away that this is what I want to do, this is what I was meant for. So how did you kind of overcome those hurdles of leaving what you knew and starting fresh?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody at some point has struggled with imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
Whether you do now or not, I think at some point in your life you've had those moments of doubt.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is I just don't stay there. Like I don't sit in that doubt, you know? I think I still have those moments, but I think you have to give yourself grace in the idea of being a beginner in something. Confidence is created by doing, and if you're not doing it, you're not going to get better at it. You're not going to learn it, you know? I think that how I kind of leaned into working through that is asking questions. I didn't want to pretend like I knew everything. I think leaning into curiosity is a big thing. And I think you just have to get uncomfortable. Like you have to get uncomfortable you have to get uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Because learning something new and being in a new environment is uncomfortable, you know? And if you're not uncomfortable, are you actually challenging yourself? Are you actually growing? You know, those are the things that you have to ask yourself. So I think it's okay to be a beginner in something. You know, we're not all born experts. And so I think that has helped me kind of manage that imposter syndrome.
Awesome.
All right. All right. While some educators are still trying to make the move into a new role that you have been able to successfully navigate through, um, how has your approach changed each time you sought a new position?
This is probably going to be one of the longer answers because I like to say that I always say that I've transitioned 3 times. And I say that because my journey has not been easy. My first transition from the classroom was in learning design, was as an associate learning designer at a small ed tech company coming out of the classroom. I think that job search was, I don't want to say easy because it was still competitive. We had that beginning surge of teachers starting to like say, this isn't for me, let me leave the classroom.
Mhm.
But I think I positioned myself very well. I really knew what I brought into my classroom. Like I knew my teacher metrics. I knew the things that I did within my school community. Because sometimes I think we forget, like, it's not just what you do in your classroom, but what have you done in your school community, you know? And so I really positioned myself and made sure that I could translate the skills that I had as a teacher into this role in ed tech. And so I think I left the classroom in May of 2021 and had that job by July of 2021. So that job search was, not as rough. But shortly after there, I was laid off. And that was the rough job search experience. It took me 9 months to find a new role. And I felt like I was starting completely over. I was just like thrown into this job market with tons of teachers who have now left on top of all the other people that have been impacted by layoffs. So it was just a lot to learn. I reworked my resume a million times. And then I really started taking networking on LinkedIn seriously because at that point I was just like, th- this could be the way that I find a job, like, and I didn't want to go back to teaching. So that really wasn't an option for me. And so went through multiple rounds of interviews, reworked my resume a million times. And then I met a few people on LinkedIn, one of them being Holly Owens, that most people may know. She had an opportunity to kind of join her community that she was building at the time, a pilot community. So I joined that, really networked, really started to build authentic connections on LinkedIn. I focused on upskilling, portfolio. I focused on optimizing my LinkedIn profile, and building somewhat of a personal brand. I started to make myself visible with content. And I think this made the biggest impact because that visibility eventually helped me to land contract roles while I was laid off.
Mhm.
And I used and leveraged that to keep me afloat while I looked for my next full-time role. And that fully optimized profile pretty much led me to I think I had about three offers from recruiters, and two of those I accepted, one of them being a long-term contract, and then the other I didn't accept. And then the third offer actually is the role I'm in now, which leads me to my last job search or transition. And that one, um, kind of same story. I was laid off again. And but this one I kind of started to know what was going on. So I was more proactive in this job search. So this job was proactive. I began to start like getting my resume together, getting back on LinkedIn, building up, my connections again. And then I had a recruiter a week before my layoff tell me about a new role. I said, sure, let's have an interview. And 3 weeks later, I had an offer. So, I think my approach was definitely different every time, and it was a different journey every time. But it definitely taught me each journey taught me something different for sure. I
Definitely.
know
And
that was long-winded. Oh my
no,
goodness.
that was great. No, it's fantastic insight, and I'm glad to hear the process. Once the interviews started, it wasn't like a long, drawn out thing for you because you hear about that
Yeah.
a lot too. So it's encouraging to hear, especially as a recruiter. It's always nice
Yeah.
to hear that that's the experience that you had. So as Ashley can attest on this show, I talk about transferable skills a lot, just because I think that that's kind of a hurdle that we see people going from the classroom to something new or just any career in general. There's those things that you want to hold on to, things that you enjoy about your current role that if you're going to step into something new, you want to take that with you. So now that you've been working in the L&D space for a few years, you've grown in that field and had a few different opportunities and experiences. What would you say are some of the skills that you maybe didn't think right off the bat would be transferable, but they really helped you as your career has progressed outside?
Yeah, I always have like a little spiel about transferable skills, and I
Mm,
like to preface what I'm gonna say with this kind of like spiel. I think the thing about transferable skills, especially, I think there's a big misconception about it
mhm.
in the transitioning teacher world.
Yeah,
Just respectfully, I think a lot of people or a lot of teachers or people think that, just having the transferable skills is enough.
right.
And it's not. Like we all have transferable skills. No matter what job we're working, we all have them.
Mhm.
It's about how you translate them. No one is getting a job simply because they have a transferable skill.
Right.
They are getting a job because they know how to use that transferable skill in the place that they're trying to go. They know how to translate that skill. And so I think two big skills that I didn't always really like see as transferable skills, but are is kind of like back to the first thing that I said is what are you doing in your school community? So like stakeholder management in L&D is very much, you have to communicate with stakeholders, SMEs, you're working with cross-functional teams. Like there's so many little things going on here. And as a teacher, you're kind of doing the same thing, but we also don't always look at that piece as work. Like we're always focused on what we're doing in the classroom for our students, but we are also working with parents. We're also working with admin. We're also working with other colleagues. We also may be partnering with the community to bring things into our schools. So that also is similar to stakeholder management. It's just in a different context. I think another one is needs analysis. As teachers, we're doing a lot of reading, like analyzing data. We're looking a lot at observing. We're taking notes at student behavior. We're analyzing and identifying root causes of academic gaps, things like that. Doing
Yeah.
the same thing in L&D. It's just in a different capacity. Looking at performance gaps, asking the right questions to make sure that we understand what the goals are. So there's a lot of like parallels, but I think it's all in how you take that transferable skill and make it work to where you're trying to go because they look different. They're similar, but they look different in different spaces. So I think those are just some examples. But mostly that's what I want to say
Yeah.
about transferable skills. Like, yeah.
All right. So, on the other side of that, what would you say are some of the skills that you found that you needed to develop so far? So, a lot of transitioning educators choose learning and design just because there's that concept that it would be a smoother process to move their skills from the classroom
Mhm.
into this type of setting. Can you share some insight on how you were able to add skills to your strengths?
Yeah, so I would say I think the two main, and these kind of are not like niche, like super like general skills. I think these are a little bit more kind of out of the box.
Mhm.
I think the first one is like corporate communication. I think there's a lot that goes on in the corporate world that you kind of have to learn. Just like things like KPIs, like how do you connect business goals to learning outcomes? Like how decisions are made, how leadership works, how processes across um, teams, across departments, how that works. I think that's a big shift. And I think there's a lot of learning that comes with that because it is a little bit different from our world as teachers.
Yeah.
I also think it's important to address the things that I had to unlearn, which at the same time I was learning. Because I think as a teacher, you have a certain mindset and you're conditioned in a certain environment with certain behaviors, like the teacher guilt that we have, taking days off, like you know, and the fact that we're used to wearing so many different hats. I think you have to unlearn that in this kind of like corporate space or wherever you might move, you have to kind of unlearn that you're not the only person in this like machine and that they are not the only cog in the machine. Like there's so many more people, so many more teams, so much more support. So you kind of have to unlearn kind of taking on everything and learning how to delegate things. You also have to learn that, time like rest and relaxation and breaks, they're not earned.
Mhm.
Like you're supposed to do that. That's what keeps your cup full so that you can continue to give what you need. So I think those are the things that I also like had to learn to unlearn. Is that teacher mindset shift. I still sometimes feel guilty with taking PTO, but yeah, it's something that you have to unlearn.
So people who are connected with you on LinkedIn can kind of see, you mentioned that you were building your brand and you share a lot of insight and tips on how to make transitions and your personal experience with that journey. So that essence of giving back, people that are in a position that you were in and helping them along the way, was that something that when you got your new role that was top of mind for you of, I could have used this during my own search, so I'm now going to kind of give back in this situation. And, in doing that, how did you reflect on your experiences, people in your network that you leaned upon and pull kind of inspiration from them? They did this, it was helpful for me. I'm going to do similar for my network now.
Yeah, I think at first it wasn't. Like when I first like that first layoff, I kind of was just focused on how can I build a network, but I really wasn't focused on like the content creation aspect or the sharing my insights. Like I was more focused on just building authentic connections with people, especially in the fields that I wanted to stay in and continue to like grow in. So I think that was my initial plan. And then eventually I kind of did have that feeling of like once I found a job, I was like, I continued to see more layoffs. I continued to see more teachers wanting to leave the classroom. And I knew what that felt like. And so I think that's where I did start to have a shift of like, now I want to actually help people as much as I can to figure out what their next move is or and also because I didn't want to, I know what it feels like to be laid off as well. Like I know that what comes with all of that and then having to navigate a job search, especially in this job market.
Mhm.
So yeah, it got to a point where I did want to start helping other people, and that led to like me creating content and sharing insights and um yeah, building an authentic community.
I will add that You provided availability because so you're one of my connections and you were just
Mhm.
so open to talk to me and support and help where you can. So I would you can add just being available.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that about you. But
Thank you.
to expand on the networking question, since this is something Matthew and I talk about regularly, now that you have several years of experience in the learning and design space, how has your network grown? And looking back to when you first decided to take the steps out of the classroom, what advice would you share to your past self on building this network, strengthening your connections, and utilizing the support in your search?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing at the top of my mind was always to build an organic community. Like if I were to build on LinkedIn and grow, I wanted it to be organic. Like I wanted it to be people, obviously people in my field, but and other people. I'm welcoming everybody into the network, but I really wanted it to be curated with things that I could benefit from and things that I could share with other people and ways that I could connect with the pain points of the field that I'm in. I really wanted to learn. I want to stay up to date on what's going on, and so I thought that was kind of my approach in building a network. I wasn't really worried about followers because that doesn't always equal engagement, nor does it actually give you an authentic community in which you can actually share with people. And so letting people get to know you authentically and sharing your insights and allowing others to do the same, I think has always been my strategy in growing my network. And if I could give advice to my past self, I'd say you need to network. You need to you don't need to wait until you need to build a network. You should be doing that even if you have a job right now. You should be doing that. You should be building a network while you're working because the network not only helps you when you need something or when you need a job, but it's also going to help you as you're working in your field. And so don't don't wait to build a network. And I think the last thing is don't underestimate a fully optimized LinkedIn profile. That's what I would have definitely told myself years ago, but I learned and we're here. So,
And so, last question we have is one that we ask anyone who joins Maximize Monday, and it's a funny one just because you've been giving advice this entire time, but we always like to give you this chance. Along the way, I'm sure you received a piece of advice or some insight from someone else that really kind of helped you. So, always like to give the opportunity. What was that piece of advice along your search, or even before you started your search? Just something that you kind of leaned on that really helped you and you would pass on to others if they message you like what's some advice you can give me, you lean on this more than anything else.
yeah, I'd say I think the biggest thing I learned, and I still am learning, is don't close the door on yourself. Sometimes the biggest barrier um, is the story you tell yourself, whether you're capable of doing something or not. Sorry. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to check all the boxes. It's just really about apply. Don't reject yourself. Like apply to that job, talk to that person, do the thing. Like post. Don't be afraid to post. I think at one point I was kind of like, I don't really want to post. Is that cringy? Is that this? Like, don't worry about it. Share your insight. And I always kind of go by like the one person theory is like, if I'm just helping one person, then that's good enough for me. Like, not everybody has to like my post. Not everybody has to resonate with it. But don't close the opportunity on yourself prematurely. Let someone else reject you, but don't reject yourself. Don't tell yourself no before anybody else has the chance to.
I like
Perfect.
that.
Well, Nadia, we appreciate you taking some time to join in. Ashley, I'll let you close us out this time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Nadia, so much for joining us. I think this was a great segment. It's going to be an awesome episode because I will say, as someone that did the transitioning, L&D is like the top thing that educators feel comfortable going in because
Yeah.
not only does the title resonate, it just seems like something more simpler and easier to do. I appreciate you for
Thank
being
you.
available, as always, to do this and just to be a great connection on LinkedIn. I'll let you plug yourself in for others, because just like we met on LinkedIn, I'm sure others would like to pick your brain, and I would say, a great support resource.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, so I am Nadia Johnson, MSIDT on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect and or follow. I've taken a little break with posting and being as because I just, started that new role and it's fun. I've been learning a lot. So I've taken a little break, but I'm kind of gearing up to start sharing more again. So feel free to connect, follow. I'm happy to support however I can.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks again. Thanks everyone who listened, who watched, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks so much.